Alrighty. Well, my only real topic for today is I did want to talk about um, just perform. I guess from the American cars, like we just performance bargains at a certain point, right? Obviously, everyone has their bargain price. Most people say a certain car, one car, the other, cool, right? Especially if you just like racing in general. I don't care which one, which type of racing you like to do. If you just like racing in general, yeah, right. Like some quick ones off the top of my head is obviously either C6 or C7s, and even the C8s. Like one of that three generation span is a crazy lineup, right? And so they're just powerhouses, all three of them. From Ford, like I know I like it. They like Ford has the Mustangs, which even the regular ones are pretty good, right? The only thing I don't like about the newer ones, yeah, you're good there, but the older style, like the what is it, the S550s, S550s and prior, pretty much like the Gen 1 and Gen 2 and Gen 3 Mustangs, probably, I think. But like the only thing I did not like about those cars is the manual trans, right? They had the MT82s, bombs, ticking time bombs. I'm like, you have got to be joking. I'm like, how are you gonna put right? How are you gonna put basically a full blown your like pinnacle sports car, and you're gonna give this thing from the manuals? If it was the automatic, I mean, I'm sure some people would have still complained. Like if the 6R80 was like basically not as strong as it is, if that thing was like pretty weak, yeah, I'm sure people would have been pissed, right? Because those guys normally just want to be able to drive their car just fine. But I think that's the thing. I think whether you get the automatic or manuals, I think you should be able to at least just drive them without having to worry, especially if you try to drive it with a little bit of aggression, like, or just have a little bit of a spirited run here and there, right? If you're doing it a lot, yeah, you're gonna push either transmission to the limit, right? Um, if you're just doing it here and there for that type of people, like I don't know. I think it should be strong. It should have been stronger than it was, and that's why I don't know why Ford went to Tremix. I think like if you want to go from that generation, the Mach E, I think would be your best bet if you don't want to spend or deal with Shelby style money, right? Because you got the 350s and the GT 500s, but the 350 got, yes, engine sounds phenomenal, right? Engine is great, but I think that falls into, I'm not gonna say it's like the exact same thing, but it's kind of a thing where the way Chevy has it, where you have whichever from the LS platforms, which one do you think is the best bang for buck engine on a budget, right? You've got, which it could just be me, but between the LS3 and the LS7, say those are kind of like what I see in terms of a trend. What people tend to enjoy is those two engines. LS7, well, 7-liter naturally aspirated 500 horsepower, and it can reach 7K on its RPM. So I'm like, cool, right? LS3 takes a lot to break that thing. Takes a lot of thing. You really need to do a lot of shit to break that engine down. For the Coyotes, I'm like, then you got the 5.2s off the Voodoos, specifically the Voodoo. That one, and obviously the Coyotes. Voodoo sounds better. I think the Coyote will last longer, right? And it really depends on what you're doing. But I think in general, I'm not going to say that the 5.2 is an equivalence of an LS7. They're not, okay? Like, they both have their flaws. Like, yeah, they both have their flaws. But I just think like from the engine standpoint, and you put it in the same exact car, and like if you just want to go into it worry free without having to get brand new whatever, right? Or a certain thing may be redone, like LS7 heads, for example. I would say, yeah, in terms of the best bang for buck engines between the two brands would probably be obviously the Coyotes and the LS3s. Like, I think I think one of the best cars in general, I think the Grand Sport C6 with the manual specifically, because this is how they made that car. The manual Grand Sports off the C6 were dry sumped LS3s. So I was like, talk about a phenomenal track car, right? Obviously, it doesn't weigh nowhere near the same, I don't believe, as the C6, like Z06. I think that Z06 sheds off about 200 pounds compared to the regular Grand Sports and other C6s. Yeah, it sheds off a lot of weight, but like I said, from a worrisome standpoint, I think the LS3s off the Grand Sports, I think, are probably your best bets. Coyotes, if you don't mind the automatics, I would say probably that second gen standpoint from like 2015 to 2017. I think that one. If you want a manual, I would say try to find a Mach 1 off the S550s with those Coyotes, because the nice thing about those ones, it basically gets the entire, like the pretty much the same cooling system, right, for hard drivers, for the same cooling system that the GT350 gets, and it gets thrown onto that Mustang with the 5-liter. So I'm like, yeah, heat management should be, when everything's working, should be great on that car. Should be great. And if you don't want to buy a Corvette, Camaros, right? If you want an SS, obviously the manuals are quite stout in those vehicles. That's the one difference. There's trade-offs to this. All right, you go with Ford, and you try to buy a Mustang prior to the S650. If you try to buy those Mustangs, if you don't buy a Mach 1 or 350, you're not getting a Tremec manual trans. You just won't. You're going to get MT82, unless it's already been swapped. But if you're just going to get one off of whoever, and knowing if you know that they haven't really swapped anything, you're going to get that transmission. You get a Mach 1, you get the Tremecs, which the Tremec ones are pretty well known at this point as to be one of the best manual trans makers on the market, right? They've done it for Ford, Chevy, Dodge. They've done it. That's what they do. That's why I don't know why Ford went away from them. I'm like, why? All right. I'm like, this would be a phenomenal transmission for this Mustang. I'm like, and that would have been great, right? Because I'm like, the 6R80 was not a bad transmission. I'm sure like some people will say it's still an automatic, or it has its flaws, feels sluggish, whatever, right? To this point, it is 2025. To this point, that transmission was on the Mustang for I want to say about 7 years, maybe. With the Coyote specifically, it was on that car for 7 years. That thing proved itself to be one of the strongest transmissions. Same thing for the 6L80s. 6L80s off of Chevys. I've proven if you're like a roll race or anything, have proven that when you've done it right, they can go. They can really go. You just got to really do a lot of torque management on those transmissions to kind of so you don't have to like force that transmission into max torque at too early or whatever the case is, right? You got to be able to manage it where the transmission won't decide to end itself in that moment. If you don't want a Corvette and you want something else, I would say Camaros are pretty good, despite their visibility flaws. Camaros are pretty solid. Because you've got, like, obviously if you get an SS, you've got, if you get an SS and if you worry about maybe overheating or having any sort of cooling concerns, if you're checking an SS, try to check if it has a 1LE package, because that's not just a ZL1 1LE thing. That's available on the other Camaros, right? That's available for the SS. So if you have the 1LE, you get the brakes. You get 1LE brakes off the ZL1, right? And then you get it's basically like a Mach 1 on Chevy standpoint. You just get the ZL1's entire like cooling aspect, like cooling efficiency standpoint. It gets thrown onto the SS, and in theory, it should cool off even better, right? Or it should be able to manage the heat better. This is a naturally aspirated LT1 against what the ZL1s have, which are LT4 superchargers. Yes, forced induction engines, so surprise, surprise, make a lot of heat, right? They make heat. Say they run hotter, especially like underhood temps. That can be another thing that some people can worry about. If you have hood vents, which if you have the 1LE package, hood vents are already on the car. That's another thing. They give you a brand, literally the ZL1 1LE or the SS 1LEs have a vented hood for heat extraction purposes. It's like this is a purpose-built track car. They try to get as much heat out of the engine bay as possible and maintain everything that the car can do. Like those SS 1LEs, great, right? And those ones have the Tremix, and I think they're TR6060s on the 6th gens or 5th gens. I think they might have changed it. I think they stopped doing the T56 for that car a long time ago. Once the TR6060 came out. Yeah, that one is a good one. If it's a 5th gen, dude, for me personally, I just love the look of the 5th gen ZL1s, right? And I know what you're thinking. You probably think that car is significantly slower than the 6th gens, which, yes, it is, right? It's much heavier. It's about, I think, 300 pounds more, and it has less power. So yes, the SS of the 6th gens, the ZL1 to ZL1 comparison is not even close. That newer one has about 100 horsepower, or not even that, not 100, like 70 horsepower more and 300 pounds lighter. Yeah, so it's no contest, and better transmission, better gearing, whatever it is. But the heat management of that car is also quite stout. Just that's what it's a ZL1. That's what they're built to be. They're built to be track cars. Right? That's the whole purpose, is to try to push these cars' performance limits while maintaining some sort of affordability to the American people. So that's just how American cars go. They try to build as much performance as possible, basically on a budget. Especially those cars, especially just the regular Mustangs or whatever, Corvettes. Yeah, I think if you, damn, I got almost hit a curb. Yeah, if you really just look at it, yeah, like the Mach E's or Mach E's, no, ignore that one. Mach 1, Mach 1 is a quite stout vehicle. The newer Mach 1s, I think after 2018, they started giving that thing started giving it an automatic trans, which they gave that one the 10 speeds. So I'm like, there you go. I'm like, that's still not a terrible transmission. Obviously, people have had their issues with any automatic, I think, but hey, it's not perfect. It can be an annoyance trying to fix it, but no one's perfect, right? So these transmissions get abused on a daily basis, and people don't necessarily know how to wait on it, right? Like, unless you have the money or the time to really just flat out, you know, do any sort of replacement or rebuilds, whatever the case is. If you got that, cool, right? But I'm willing to bet most people don't have that type of thing. So, and I see a lot of people, they like floor it, like just go into instant race car mode the moment they get off their house. I'm like, dude, I get whenever, like, if you've ever seen anyone online say, start your car and let it warm up for anywhere between 30 seconds and 1 minute, right? Which is true, right? You should do that. You should watch the RPM gauge go down to its idling RPM or close to it, right? My car idles at around 600. I normally don't leave the house, and it gets there. It gets there in like a minute. It's not that bad, right? Like, just wait. For other cars, obviously, it might be a bit different. For me, that's the way it is. But I'd say, yeah, just wait, dude. And then they try to, and then even then, after that, they think the car is fully warmed up. I'm like, it's not, right? You just gave the time you just gave some time for the transmission, basically, and the engine. Like the engine, you gave it some form of lubrication, right? And now oil pump is pumping oil in through the engine and getting everything lubricated as it needs to be. Cool. People forget about transmissions. That's the other thing. You have to be able to wait for the trans, right? Give it time. And the transmission takes a little bit longer to warm up, right? Because the transmission uses, like the way in most cars, if you have an automatic trans, it's basically built into the radiator. So yes, the coolant is used to heat it up and to try to cool it down. But at a certain point, especially here in Arizona, the coolant can become, instead of it being a cooling aspect, starts becoming a heat source, where it starts just not doing whatever it is the coolant is supposed to do. So, but park right here, beautiful. But yes, I'm like, you just got, like, I think most people forget that. I'm like, the transmissions also need some time to get itself going. Okay. And I know normally the ideal limit for the automatic transmissions, the ideal thing would be somewhere between, like, I don't know, I would assume 180 and 200, somewhere there. Some can run lower than that, but I'm like, just give it some time, right? Just drive it around a bit, and give it some time to at least start getting itself heated up and lubricated. And you don't even have to. The thing is, you don't have to drive it hard to get it heated up, right? The torque converters will heat up. That's the hottest thing in the automatic trans. That will get everything going. If you just drive it normally, you will be fine. Okay. For manual trans, obviously, they have their fluids too, and obviously you'd want to just kind of just go through the gears and do whatever you need to do. But and those ones don't get nowhere near as hot, right? Nowhere, not even close to an auto, like in terms of how much heat they can do. Um, for for any car, I think you just got to really dial in on like that cooling efficiency of that car, right? If that car has a flaw in it and you live in a hotter area, I would say try to look into it, trying to see what upgrades you can follow up on that car with, like mine, right? I live in Arizona. I have an old school style cooling system from 2004, right? It's '04, right? I don't believe Chevy had that much crazy stuff at that time. Like, it's '04. I'm like, what? Like, the best thing they pulled off at that point in terms of production vehicles was the Z06 of my car. All right, and that thing had an LS6. And then if you want to argue, they had the other cars like the WS6 Firebirds or the 4th Gen Camaro SSs. Cool, right? Either of those three is good, but to say that that's the peak of that time, yeah, I'm like, and those cars all had their flaws in terms of some relatively weak cooling systems for hotter areas. If you lived up north, oh, you're good, right? You're good. You live down here on the West Coast, especially the Southwest region, yeah, it gets hot here. So you have to kind of dial in on it, make sure everything is fine without, obviously, and like I've had this radiator and it's in December, and my car still heats up just fine. So I'm like, if you live in the Southwest region, I would highly recommend getting at least the radiator, right? Getting a full-blown aluminum radiator from whoever the case is, DeWitt's or any sort of equivalence to that. Search anything up about whoever it is you're looking for, make sure they're actually good. And say DeWitt's is probably the most expensive route, or having a radiator as a whole is an expensive route in general, to be honest. But I think it's worth it for me just living down here. It's helped me a lot. But yeah, I think for any sort of performance bargains, I would like to say yes. I would like to say go between, and like when I say performance bargains, I'm like, this car already has everything. Like basically, like it's got good amount of power. It has the good transmissions and everything, and an ideal cooling system to cool anything off, whether it's the engine and trans, diff, whatever. And those, like the Mach 1s and the ZL1s or the 1LE packages, 1LE package SSs, those ones have like trans and diff coolers too. So I'm like, they really try to cool off any sort of fluid that has its own tendency to heat up. So look into those if you like any sort of performance cars. Most expensive one I think would probably be between the Mach 1 and even a C6 Grand Sport would be a most expensive one. I think the Z SSs, it's hard to find one. You have to really like read about that specific SS if you want one with a 1LE package. You have to really look into it. And on the brakes it'll say a 1LE. If it doesn't say that, then you probably just have the regular one. And sometimes also you just look at the hood. There's a hood vent down the middle on the 1LE SSs. The ZL1s, obviously, they're probably going to be pretty well ventilated anyway. Even without that 1LE package of the ZL1s, they're already manageable. The 1LE just kind of adds extra cooling, like cooling upgrades to it. C7s and Corvettes in general, if you don't want those big Z06s, Z51, yeah. There's any one of those with the Z51 package, that can do it right there. Okay, that will do it. So, but all right then, I'm about to go head out to work. You all have a good rest of your day. I'm out.